I will say that I think that I feel very strongly that the roles in general are important. I feel like we as a community are lacking structure deeply. And I feel like those types, even the traditional gender roles, will help bring that back. Regardless of how we feel about it personally, I do feel like it will bring structure back into the community, because I think we've gotten to a place where a lot of, 1 in 4 or 3 in 4, I'm mixing up the statistics right now, of Black women being single. We hear the stats all the time. Raising the household, like raising our families, and these are great. We were both raised by single mothers, and we can sit there and say, we're fine. I think Rocky mentions that when she's talking about it, when she talked about it, about her being raised by her and her 4 siblings being raised by a single mom, and they turned out, they were all fine. And we say the same thing. We're like, oh, I didn't notice the difference. And I didn't. But I can also say that I'm sure that life would have been much different if I did have a father there, right? Like if I did have a second income in the least, right? I think would have made a big impact on my mother raising twins on her own, at a young age, all of these things. I feel like as a community, we've gotten way too used to that. And I think that it's been not that has been harmful, but I think that the idea that we've kind of just been sitting and accepting that as fact, like accepting the fact that like women are raising men, right? Like single women are raising men, and we're saying like they're growing up, they're being great. Your mom did a great job with you, I'll say, like, I think, right? But at the same time, like not everybody's gonna be you. Like there's plenty of other men who are very impressionable and whose life could have been very different if they had that figure in their life. And I think that that's what we need to step away from, accepting that as the standard for our community when it's not in any other culture. We're like the only culture where the women are raising an entire family on their own, because there are other communities where there's shared responsibilities and the woman is the matriarch, is sort of like also an equal head or the head of household, but they're still part of a 2-parent household. And that's something that we've gotten way too used to not having. And I think that it's important for us to get that structure back into the community, because we've obviously seen what it's done to our community.
So I'm gonna disagree with you on something. And there was a very important detail that you missed. The important detail is that I did not have a father in the house, but I had a 2-adult household. It was my mom and my aunt. And that's a very important distinction.
I had my aunt and my grandmother.
Exactly.
My mom and my grandmother.
You had exactly, that's my point. You didn't have your father there, but you had your mother and your grandmother there. My mom and my aunt, now I'm not, as obviously, I'm just putting information. I'm not taking a position, but thorough matters. I had my mom and you're shaking your head, but I'm not, I didn't even,
you had
I didn't
2
even have
women.
An opinion.
Same thing. You had 2 women,
listen,
2 amazing women, but 2 women in the least. Like it's,
well, listen,
it's the same thing.
Well, listen, my thing is, you're shaking your head. I didn't even state an opinion yet. I'm just putting information out there. So what I'm saying is, so that's an important distinction when we start talking about this. My mom and my aunt raised me. So this is when we talk about conversations like this, it's important that we're thorough, because what ends up happening is what your statement, which I don't disagree with anything you said, but it does include probably 5 different situations that each need to be addressed. So the first thing is talking about, that's why I was starting with the idea of traditional gender roles, and if that's what it is. So that's one. And what does that mean, and why does that exist? The second thing we're talking about is the idea of raising children alone. That's a second thing completely. Alone, or having 2 people, because Fontaine spoke about that also when she talked about, we all talk about a village raises a child, a lot of us had that experience.
I disagree with that.
Well, whether it's productive or it's not productive, I'm not even going to get into that yet. We're just still talking information. So that's number 2, is the idea of individuals raising kids versus a village raising kids, and if that's an effective approach. I'm not even talking if it's effective or not. I'm just saying that's a question to be asked, right? So these are like 2 things that can get put together. So first, before we get into the other ones, when we talk about like the effectiveness of single parenting, the effectiveness of villages, then we talk about the effectiveness of having a man in the household, then we talk about the idea of women earning men, and then what are the implications of that? And then we also talk about the idea of men's feeling emasculated or feeling like they don't have a place in the home. A lot of times when we have conversations like this, we jump from this point to that point, to that point, to that point, to that point, all these different points, and then we never really wrap our head around any one of them. But if we just focus specifically on, okay, a man's role in the house, women out earn men in America. What does that mean for us as a people? And women are not necessarily seeing the need to have a man there anymore. And what does that mean? Or a man is not necessarily feeling that they have a place anymore. So if we just focus on that first, this is where I'll state, I guess, my second opinion is I think the problem with this thought process is, what do we view as the purpose of having somebody else in my life? I think that's an important question.
It's multiple things.
Exactly. It is multiple things. But we don't want to skip over that question to jump to some of those other ones. So I'll say for me personally, the idea of the traditional gender role that I defined earlier, if you agree with that definition, and if you all agree with that definition of gender role, for me, I have no interest in that type of thing, because for me, like, I don't need you to cook for me. Like, I cook for myself, you cook for yourself, and that's perfectly fine. It's efficient for how we live. We're both business professionals. We both have day jobs. We're bringing in very close to the same income. We have similar overall financial goals where we want to grow a certain way financially together. We have a vision of, hey, how do I want my life to be? When I wake up every day, how do I want to feel? Right? Like, what's important to me as an individual? Like, where do I want to be in 1 year, in 5 years? What is it going to take to get there? And who do I want on my team that would want to work towards that same goal? So for me, a woman, and I don't think if somebody wants the traditional gender role, no problem at all. But I know for me, I would never want to be with that person. And maybe it's because that's not who my mother was. But for me, I would prefer somebody that's like you, that's you know, you all right, you know? You all right. But with somebody like you, where it's saying, hey, like, I don't need you to cook. I don't need to have food ready when I come home, because the reality is you're working too. I would rather know that you're at work, grinding, growing mentally, tapping into like your full potential, because if I see you tapping into your full potential, that motivates me to tap into my full potential. If I see that you're being unlocked and you're pursuing these things, then that motivates me to pursue these things. And if I want to be the best version of myself, then I need a partner that's going to be the best version of themselves. And that doesn't necessarily get confined within the idea of a traditional gender role. However, there may be another person that's saying, no. I want to work and I want comfort. When I come home, I want food there. I want comfort. I want a clean house. I don't need my wife to do anything. I make enough money. I work hard, but I want somebody that can do that. Then in that situation, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to find a woman who shares that same life vision as that person, that can say, hey, the life I view for myself fits within that perspective for you. And both are okay, but the thing that I would say is neither are necessary. So gender roles or whatever, gender roles are not necessary, the only, in my opinion, necessity when it comes to relationships is identifying the person that aligns with the type of life that you want to live.